Let's begin with a structural overview. Welcome to another lecture. Today we consider the case of Kane Parsons, also known as Kane Pixels, an American YouTuber and filmmaker whose work in high-fidelity internet horror, most notably The Backrooms, has rather efficiently redrawn the boundary between bedroom workstation and studio cinema. I am Professor Alexei. We will maintain a measured pace, a cool head, and where appropriate, a modest smile at the absurdity of history happening on a home computer.
Hello everyone. I am Priyanka, a doctoral student, and I think today we will try to understand how a teenager with Blender, After Effects, and a good ear for music can become like the youngest director in A24's history. It makes me wonder how quickly the ground is shifting under traditional filmmaking.
To frame our discussion, we should define a few terms with care. Creepypasta refers to short-form internet horror fiction that spreads virally across forums and social platforms. Think of it as folklore whose campfire is a comment section. Found footage denotes a film style presented as if discovered recordings, typically handheld and diegetic, which increases realism by imitating imperfect capture. Blender is an open-source 3D creation suite, and Adobe After Effects is a compositing and motion graphics environment. In combination, they enable a single creator to control modeling, lighting, camera simulation, and post-production. In simpler terms, we observe a pipeline where one person can become their own studio. Parsons made exemplary use of this end-to-end control.
Maybe the best place to begin is by asking the question of why this matters right now. I'm curious about the stakes. Is it fair to say his success shows how film production has been democratized by tools and platforms that do not ask permission before you publish?
Clearly, Parsons' trajectory exemplifies a larger reallocation of power. The locus of greenlight authority has shifted from executive rooms to audience algorithms, with the caveat that technical fidelity remains a differentiator. For years, found footage and internet horror were dismissed as low quality, or at best, efficient gimmicks. The Backrooms under Parsons inverted this by marrying the idiom to unusually careful lighting, camera behavior, and spatial sound, thus demonstrating that the aesthetic was a choice rather than a constraint. This has cultural importance because it expands the set of credible production models available to new entrants. Let's start with the history. Two headline facts first. In May 2026, A24 released the Backrooms feature directed by Parsons and starring Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renat Reinsve. And at age 19, he became the youngest director in the studio's history. Earlier, he had registered his YouTube channel in April 2015, when he was roughly 9 to 10 years old, beginning with Minecraft Let's Plays and meme videos. Two anchor dates. The Backrooms found footage arrived in January 2022, and it catalyzed everything that followed. The A24 feature appeared in May 2026, effectively closing the loop from internet short to theatrical film. By 2026, the original short sat around 78 million views, which mathematically is not a fluke, but a sustained signal.
Isn't it interesting how a kid posting memes can over a decade become a studio director? I often think the consistency of practice matters more than any single breakthrough. But then, the breakthrough reshapes the past by making all the small experiments legible.
Speaking of personal connections, as someone who learned to play chess long before he learned to code, I find Parsons' path familiar. We see the same pattern of incremental study punctuated by moments of acceleration. Technology here is not the magic. It is the board and pieces. Discipline and curiosity play the game. The pleasing irony is that a teenager from Petaluma, working largely with open-source tools, could execute a move the studios did not anticipate. This logically leads us to three big questions we will examine in depth. First, what specific factors contributed to Parsons' rapid development as a filmmaker? Second, what if the Backrooms had remained a single viral short rather than expanding into a series and feature? Third, how will internet-native creators influence the future of mainstream cinema, for better and for worse? Let's proceed to the next point, the first big question. Parsons' development is best modeled as a stage pipeline. Initially, Little Big Planet served as a laboratory for layout and lighting instincts. Then, in winter 2017, he acquired After Effects, using Element 3D to import models directly into his composites, which refined camera and compositing literacy while constraining full scene realism. The decisive inflection arrived in February 2020 when he adopted Blender, enabling physically plausible lighting, camera simulation, and expansive environments. He has himself identified 2020 as his steepest growth year. While this is a self-assessment, the output support it. Short films, escalating VFX quality, and soon after, a viral proof of concept. Parallel tracks mattered. He studied film at Marin School of the Arts at Novato High, gaining access to gear and critique. He also advanced musically, moving from GarageBand to FL Studio in mid-2020, then self-scoring his work. This integrated pipeline, image and sound under one roof, reduced coordination costs and increased cohesion. We must also factor in collaboration and feedback loops. At 14, he released The Facility in June 2020 after receiving notes from Nathan Barnett, linking him to the Dad Feels web series. He then published Project 209 in late 2020 into early 2021, experimenting with analog horror textures and surveillance framing. In 2021, 6 Attack on Titan historical footage shorts sharpened his documentary horror tone. Meanwhile, he strategically split distribution. Memes sustained channel momentum while films went to local festivals, which supply deadlines and critique outside algorithmic pressure. The result was not luck, it was an ecosystem.
Can we maybe now look at the role of local festivals? I'm curious about why that matters if your audience is on YouTube anyway. Is the feedback really that different from comments and likes?
It's crucial to understand that festivals act as structured critique environments. They impose submission calendars, juried evaluation, and post-screening conversations that privilege narrative coherence over click-through rate. For a young creator, this supplies constraints that simulate professional workflows. We observed that Parsons used festivals as a crucible for story and pacing, while allowing the YouTube channel to breathe via lighter content. In effect, he decoupled craft development from platform volatility, which is an elegant design choice. On to our next point, the second big question, a counterfactual. Suppose the Backrooms found footage released in January 2022 had remained a singular artifact. We would likely see a diminished mythos, fewer iterative entries to refine tone, and no direct path to the A24 feature in May 2026. The work would still be impressive, perhaps even more pristine as a one-off. However, the absence of serial world-building would narrow opportunities for audience habituation and for Parsons to evolve a professional network at studio scale. His parents' presence on early post-viral Zoom calls with studios, necessary because he was a minor, signals how expansion created logistical needs that paradoxically further expanded opportunity.
Building on that, I want to ask something simple first. How important is series expansion for creators at this scale? Does releasing sequels or companion videos really change the career arc? Or could a single extraordinary short be enough in today's industry?
In this context, seriality functions as both laboratory and scaffolding. Each episode provides immediate feedback on pacing, art direction, and sonic motifs. Releasing scores, Backroom's original score volumes 1 through 3, and later the Oldest View original score, operates as parallel world building through sound, keeping the audience inside the atmosphere between visual drops. Moreover, a series sustains community memory. It allows ancillary projects like The Oldest View, launched March 2023, and People Still Live Here, launched January 2025, to exist without diluting the Backroom's tone. Note, too, the choice not to insert the rolling giant concept into Backroom's continuity. By spinning it into The Oldest View, Parsons preserved narrative cohesion while expanding his brand architecture. A single short can open doors. A series builds hallways. Let's shift focus to the third big question. How will internet-native creators influence the future of mainstream cinema? Parsons offers one answer. The industry now recognizes that high technical fidelity plus a legible mythos can scale from viral proof to feature film, as evidenced by A24's involvement beginning in 2023 and culminating in the 2026 release. We can infer a few trends. First, pipelines will remain lean. A small, tightly integrated team can achieve studio-adjacent visuals by embracing open-source tools and iterative scoring. Second, texture will be king. Audiences trained by platforms to detect artifice reward creators who simulate period cameras, fluorescent fall-off, or diegetic UI with near-obsessive accuracy. Third, we will see more cross-format storytelling, web episodes, ARG-like breadcrumbs, soundtrack albums, converging toward features without losing their native cadence.
To shift gears a bit, what comes to mind next is the friction points. I'm curious about the challenges these creators face when they move into mainstream production. Like, do they struggle with scale, or with studio notes, or even just the different rhythm between algorithmic releases and theatrical timelines?
Arguably, the primary challenge is translation of tempo. Internet-native cadence optimizes for frequent iteration and tight control. Studio features impose long timelines, collaborative hierarchies, and rigorous review. There is also the matter of narrative elasticity. A 10-minute web short can thrive on enigma and negative space, while a feature demands sustained character arcs and pacing that breathes without dissipating tension. Additionally, leadership becomes a creative act. Moving from solo to department-scale work requires trust, delegation, and a tolerance for the fact that your aesthetic now propagates through dozens of hands. To elaborate, one fruitful research vector is how studios can integrate such talent without dissolving their small team advantages. For example, preserving a core VFX music pod around the director, budgeting for iterative scene tests using Blender proxies, and maintaining diegetic camera logic as a North Star in pre-production, not just as an afterthought in post.
So yeah, moving on. I also noticed the psychology thread in his work. His mother was a therapist and his father a game developer. Maybe that explains, in a way, the combination of procedural problem-solving with character anxiety. It's like the rooms are puzzles, but the fear is human.
It is worth noting that such biographical intersections often leave fingerprints on the work. In Parsons' case, atmosphere and tension are engineered with technical fluency, while remaining anchored in psychological unease. The Oldest View, with its urban ruin curiosity, and People Still Live Here, with its diegetic game UI retelling events from the meadow, show an awareness that audiences today are fluent in both film and gameplay grammars. This bilingualism is a competitive advantage.
Actually, before we go too deep, I want to ask something simple first. How do we reconcile the speed of his rise with the years of groundwork? Because it looks sudden from the outside, but the timeline shows years of practice and even festival submissions.
Fundamentally, what appears as overnight success is usually a visibility event, not the beginning of the curve. From 2015 onward, Parsons learned upload cadence and platform dynamics. By 2017, he was compositing. By 2020, he was executing full 3D scenes. By 2021, he had refined a documentary horror tone. And in early 2022, the market saw the sum of those parts. In mathematics, we call this a piecewise function that becomes differentiable at the moment you notice it. In conclusion, Kane Parsons is a pioneering filmmaker whose integrated pipeline, Blender for image, FL Studio for score, YouTube for distribution, festivals for rigor, carried him from Petaluma to an A24 feature by 19. We examined 3 questions. What enabled his rapid development? What would have changed had the Backrooms remained a standalone short? And how internet-native creators may reshape mainstream cinema. For further study, we recommend investigating how accessible digital tools alter independent film economies, particularly when creators self-score and world-build across multiple series. This then completes our present analysis.
So, I guess that kind of sums it up. Thank you, Professor, and thank you to everyone listening. Maybe that's something we can come back to later as the next generation of internet creators reach feature scale. Goodbye for now.